Welcome to our last system security session for spring 2023. We have a number of highlights I'd like to engage with you. I consider to be, bright spots or in the in the whole realm of system security. There are some really cool things that some of which you're familiar with. You're seeing I have an automated update routine for my NVIDIA drivers, and because I use the GPU in my video card to help calculate, there are ways to take advantage of the power of the graphics processor on my video card. It's really important to make sure that graphics drivers are updated along with BIOS and chipset and other things. If you don't take advantage of this, I would absolutely recommend that you set up your critical hardware if there's a feature or function to automatically update. But the part that really slays me is this. Can everybody see what this says right here?
Yeah.
So here I am downloading this thing, and I mean, conceptually, this doesn't seem like a big deal, but I'm downloading the latest driver, which was released for use when? How many days ago? 6 days ago, right? That's not very long ago. And I'd like to have confidence that this is the right thing to do. But in the upper corner, depending on my screen real estate, what is it saying about this automated update utility, right? Oh, this requires an update and a relaunch now. So if I go ahead with this before I update the actual utility that's used to update, am I really getting the latest version? Or was this one half baked and it was problematic? It was a beta that was rushed to market too soon. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In terms of product design, I have a beef with software engineers who come up with stuff like this. It's like, I shouldn't even be able to do this if this is cleared first, if this hasn't cleared first. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I would put that in the putting the cart before the horse kind of environment, right? So there's a pecking order for updates. And of course, the update utility itself should be updated before you worry about using it to update other drivers. And those are things that aren't so intuitive. And the fact that it's a minor detail in the upper left corner you might not catch before you get ready to fire away, that's serious. If I relaunch this, I don't know if it's going to force a reboot. And I don't want to do that now because obviously we're starting a class. But I wanted to share that with you. We've always talked about layers in networking, and there was something that caught my eye over the weekend that I really thought was worth sharing. This article my son sent me. It says, "Why your phone charging cable needs a USB condom." Has anyone ever heard of a USB condom?
Nope.
So, believe it or not, when you are in an airport, on a plane, in a public area, in a library, have you ever made use of a charging cable with your smartphone where you plug in your cable to a port that's there for charging?
Nope.
Yeah, that's the free ones.
I have. I've done it on an airplane. And what they've found out is that the incidence of juice jacking, this is a form of an attack, right? And this is physical layers. So when you think about system security, which layer do we always start with first? The physical layer, right? What you need is an intermediate device that sits between the charging cable and the charging port. Because if you're on a plane or you're in a library and they have a free charging cable, there could be extra stuff inside there that you're not aware of And it's doing more than just providing power to charge your battery. What it's doing instead is connecting the data link to your port on the smartphone, where you think it's just the power that you're getting. It's actually connecting to another system, and it could be a Linux system that's viewing this as an external hard drive. So there's a giant sucking noise in digital terms that you're not even aware is happening, right? And you're being spied upon. Your data is being extracted without you even knowing about it. That's called juice jacking.
So I
So
have a question.
yes,
But in the case of like Android users, usually when you plug in your device into some sort of computer system, it usually gives you a notification. Do you want to just pull power, or do you want to transfer files? Wouldn't that come up as well too?
it could, unless the script was crafty enough to disable that functionality. I mean, we're used to having prompts on the screen, especially with older smartphones and with creative hackers. There could be, that's a good point, and that may save you. But sometimes those pop-ups only occur on the host that's connecting the smartphone, right? You get a pop-up on the host screen, and if that host screen is remote with a hacker, what do you think they're going to answer? Yes or no?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, doesn't necessarily show on the smartphone. I mean, yeah, a lot of times it does, but it all depends on how the code is written. The interesting thing is that the FBI has started to put this out there, right? And there is a temporary stock shortage of these devices, but you can get them on Amazon. They would be, and there's this company called Portapow, right? Now, I'm not mentioning brand names because well, that gets you into trouble when you endorse products, but essentially, this is one thing that you want to take advantage of, and you want to get these while you can. And usually scarcity drives up prices. But the fact that the FBI is in the mix and they have a recent announcement of the matter is a telling sign that this kind of thing hits in very sensitive places, right? And again, free charging by the light stand. We have free USB chargers for my desk side, my bedside lamp on the bedside table in my bedroom. And we got these off of Amazon. It used to be that you had digital picture frames where you could just connect the USB and it would automatically go ahead and display your pictures. And when you connect that USB back to your laptop, the wireless digital picture display connects to their mothership. So the physical layer is always something you want to watch out for. Intelligent devices are going to make our job for systems security that much more difficult. And to flip now from hardware to software, I wanted to give you a chance to just dabble with some quick coding in Python, the kind of coding that hackers would use for the last activity of this course, okay? So I wanted to segue from hardware to software, right? And so we've kind of run the gamut here. Important device drivers, hardware device drivers, that's an update that exposes, without updates, you expose the internals of an operating system, the privileged portions of an operating system. So that's the operating systems layer. This is about the physical layer, and now we're going to segue into software and then finally network, right? So in your study guide, we have like a mini module. This is a very short study guide, an addendum, and these are very straightforward references. It reads in plain English, only a few pages long. When you have the assessment for module 4 that's going to post later today, it's only a few questions, but it's worth just as much because we wanted you to have a chance to work some hands-on and to hit the most important aspects of system security right before we close for the semester. So once again, even though these are a few short pages, take the time between today and the close of business tomorrow, right? To just read through those, make sure you understand them. If there's anything that's written in plain English that isn't so plain to you, and give me a heads up so we can walk through it. I'll post the assessment inside the module 4, right below the final assignment. So instead of working a full-blown solution, we're going to opt for a 3-point assignment. And what I want to do is to help you experience what hackers would use to connect to a system with Python and to exchange some data with a public host, just so you see how quick and easy it is. And then I'm going to ask you if you can detect in the example shown a bad practice. And once we finish that example with the software, we'll go ahead and we'll flip into the network environment. And I want to make sure we cover some things about network security before we're done. Okay. So the focus of the software is in the network realm. And what I'd like to do is have each of you install an older version of Python, Python 2.7. And actually, there will be a link that's active. So all you'll have to do is click it. If some of you have a newer version of Python installed, there are some extra steps that you'll need to take to name it the executable Python 2. We'll talk about that in just a second. Any questions so far?
No.
So what I'd like to do is talk about the first step that's required for the first point in the assignment. Once this link is active, you'll have, and I think I want to keep this, handy, so I'll do this. There we go. It'll download an MSI file, which is not an executable. MSI stands for Microsoft install package, I guess. Yeah, Windows installer package, MSI. So you don't have to, you can't actually right click to run as admin. You just double click it. And what it's going to do is it'll want to install. If you've already had Python, a version of 3 loaded on your system, you'll want to change the defaults. And so essentially when you're done, you want to have something like this in your C drive. Now, I installed a newer version of Python 3.11 some time ago. And it turns out that if you already have a newer version of Python, it starts to muck with the older version. The truth is Python's been around long enough where there's a lot of very useful legacy code, especially for science and technology, research interests, experimental automation and so on. A lot of physicists and astronomers, they're in the process of converting older Python into newer Python. But the simple truth is some of the things that you need to be able to work for hacking are also written in this older version of Python. So the most current version of the old Python is version 2.7. And when you get that link and execute it, because I already had a new version of Python loaded, I chose to change the name so it reads Python 2.7. And when I installed that newer version of Python 3.3.11, I ended up reloading it again just to make sure it would work right. That way I always know which version number. In your activity, you'll notice it talks about using Python 2. So this is a reference if you already have a new version, the newer version, 3 dot something, 3.6, 3.8, 3.11. It's all the way up to 3.11. If you have a newer version, you're going to have to differentiate between Python 2 and Python 3. I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. If you don't have the current version of Python 3 loaded, you don't have to differentiate, and you can just use plain old Python wherever you see that, okay? So that's something that I put down here. I want everybody to understand that this is something that can throw you when you're setting up the path so that it works right, and you haven't loaded Python on your system previously. You don't have to do the extra steps. You don't have to differentiate between Python 2.7 and Python 3.1.1. You won't have this directory here, and it won't be anywhere else on your system. So when it wants to install just plain Python, let it install just plain Python. And for the other parts of this assignment, all you have to do is use just plain Python instead of Python 2 or Python 2.7. Okay? Does everybody understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah, your situation differs. And I didn't want this to throw you. So now that you're aware of that distinction, after your Python is installed, you have to make sure that the path variable has been changed. In order to do this, you need to pull up your system properties. And I'm going to show you how to do that quickly. If you go into this computer, and mine is named, so instead of saying this computer, it says Zorg. I'm going to go to properties and go to advanced system settings, and I'll click on the advanced tab and go to environmental variables. I want to edit the path system variable. So I'm going to select edit, and you see here, I have added directories for my Python 2.7 directory in the C drive, the scripts subdirectory in Python 2.7, and I also have path statements for my newer version of Python. That way I can make sure that depending on which one I want to run, I can run old school with old scripts, or I can use the newer updated version. And there is one more thing. So in order to edit this path, you just double click on one of these empty spaces and type it in and then save it. Any questions about editing the path environment variable for the system? Not the user variable, the system variable.
No
But
question.
this is in the assignment directions, right?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to record this segment as a part of the assignment directions.
Okay.
Okay. Now, inside the C drive, inside here, when you install the Python 2.7, it's going to read python2.exe. And if you have a newer version of Python, you should change the name from python.exe to python2.exe. Conversely, you should find the directory where your Python 3 is loaded, take the python.exe in that directory, and change the name from python.exe to Python 3. That way, when you're new school, you go to the command prompt and you load Python 2, well, I'm sorry, Python 3, or you go to the command prompt and you load Python 2. Does everybody see what I just did here?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're only using Python 2.7 for this assignment?
Correct. Because if you use the Python 3.11 or a newer 3. variant, what will happen is that some of the commands and statements will not work properly. Okay? So I'm glad you asked that. You know, there's a great book, and it's called Black. Let's show it to you. So what I'm about to show you about this network hacking, was taken from a book called Black Hat Python. And one of the things that I find really insidious about a lot of cool stuff out on YouTube and in popular books is that they don't always instill the best practices when you're doing software. So I thought, wow, what a high note to end on. This guy's popular. He's made a lot of money. Black Hat Python, just in sites, right? Now, this is the second edition. He may have a third or a fourth edition out. And maybe he converted his Python to the newer version of Python. I don't know. But in any case, here we are. And at this one point, I'm going to highlight this again and ask you, according to the principles you have learned in this class, what is it about this sizing of a response variable that isn't appropriate? We'll revisit that in a little minute. So he outlines the steps to follow here. And what we find out is that there were some changes in step 3 that didn't really work quite as expected because of the version changes in Python. And what I've done is research this so that essentially, no, that's not the one I need. Essentially, what you have are the statements that have been corrected. So what I'm going to do here is draw attention to each line of these code. Basically just a quick review of what we're doing with the code. So we're going to import the socket module. We're going to initialize a variable called target_host, and we'll use the Google website as the popular host. Is everybody with me so far?
Yes.
And
Yes.
then we'll go ahead and the next line we'll execute. We're going to define the port. So we want to go to port 80 for Google, right? And then we're going to build the socket to create the connection to the Google host. And then we're going to connect the socket to the Google host using the two variables, target host and target port, as the arguments for that function. Everybody follow me so far?
Yes.
Yeah, this is pretty easy, isn't it? I mean, it's very straightforward. Import the socket module in Python, define your host, your port, get your socket tuned up, connect your socket. Now let's send them some information, right? I want to send a get command from them to queue up the server, so it's going to return something. The last step is I'm going to initialize a variable and use the client receive function, and I'll specify a memory allocation of 4096 bytes or 4 kilobytes. And then after I receive that information back from the host, I'm going to print it on screen by printing the response variable. Does everybody understand what I'm doing here step by step?
Yes.
I want to call your attention to this right here as we start. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to provide these statements to you in the assignment, right? I'm going to copy these. And I'm going to go to my prompt. And if this is working right and I have the correct version, I'm going to right click with my mouse. It'll repeat the command and I'll hit enter. If I get my 3-arrow prompt, it means there was no problem with that command. I'm going to do the same thing with the rest of these. I'm just going to leave out the 3-arrow prompt symbols. So far, so good. Everybody with me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Oh, by the way, when we first opened and it showed this right here, that's the first thing you capture for step 1. So after you've installed 2.7, when you get that screen, you can capture that screen, and that's the first criteria that you have to submit for the assignment. A highlight of this. Everybody with me?
Yeah.
Yeah, now we're on step 2. So we're using the text file that I've given you, and you're going to go ahead and paste these in here. We're in interactive mode, and so we're not in a text editor. We're going to do a .py extension. We're executing one command at a time because we want it to be interactive. If we have a problem, we want to adapt and adjust, which is what hackers do. They don't want to spend a lot of time debugging. They just want to get in there and get out and hurt somebody. Did I miss something? Let me check. Maybe I went out of sequence. I have port socket, Google host, client socket, right? Wait a second. Yeah, that's good. I have client connect. Huh. Yeah, we didn't have that error before. Oh, what did I miss? This isn't a bad thing, right? If you miss a step, it'll tell you something. And you go back to your reference, it's like, oh, I forgot this line I was talking. Does everybody follow?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the other command, let's see if I can just go ahead and make up for this. I'm a hacker, I'm in a hurry. I'm gonna do the target port equals 80. And then I'll repeat the command. I'll repeat the same command that barfed, that one. Now that I have both variables loaded, I shouldn't have a problem with target port, correct? I don't. I'm good. So again, I'm just working very fast. And what I want to do is get some information out of the Google web host. I got to hit enter. I get an expected return of 36. It's telling me something about the return that I can anticipate here. I need to capture that. When I'm getting the information, I need to be able to capture that somehow. So here's my response. I'm storing it in the response variable, and now I'm going to print response. Okay. Question. And you tell me. What's the problem with specifying 4096 bytes for the memory space if I'm using this for like a serious Python program? What's the problem with specifying all that memory space? Does this look like I need 4096 characters to store the output here?
No.
No. So what have we just shown? Very popular references in books and in YouTube and online in GitHub and Stack Exchange. They have great examples. But what they don't tell you is that you have to have some sense about how much memory you allocate. Remember, if you allocate too much memory, if there's a mismatch in the size of the memory allocation, you're kind of leaving a barn door open for hackers to take advantage of that and stuff things in there, right? Buffer overflow, right? You inject malicious commands and characters. You understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Almost like a brute attack, a brute force attack.
Yes. And there are many different methods, but basically, if you allocate too much memory for what you really need, you're leaving a lot of open, unused resources and memory address for hackers to store things and execute things. And it's considered a best practice to size your variables appropriately. Now, Google is a pretty plain website. You know, when you first connect to Google, you only get so much information. And of course, you want to test these things before you do it. The point I'm trying to make is that even talented authors are focused on the method that they're sharing, and folks that are coding are focused on the method, but they're not focused on whether or not they're providing too much in the way of resources to others, right? So this is just one quick example of how we get into trouble when we're teaching and learning these methods and we don't adjust those methods. What I could do is reference the other output here. I don't have a whole lot of data back out from this web server. And if I were to quantify the amount of information that I would expect to return from a network connection on average, I could pare this down quite a bit. So instead of allocating extra memory space for uninvited guests, right? You have to remember, hackers are going to figure out how to take advantage of stuff like this. So this is the information that you're going to highlight and capture to submit for step 2 of your assignment. Is everybody with me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So at this point, what you've done is in a very few short minutes, you've walked through some simple Python statements to create a network app that will connect to a server or a host to get information back out of that server or host. And this is what malicious agents noodle with. They modify this basic technique so that they get information, more information than they should. Like, I don't know, what version of HTTP are they using, right? All sorts of things. And I just want you to be aware that this is one of the ways that they get research or conduct research on some of their hosts. They'll just issue some basic commands to get data back. I'm going to exit out of here, and you'll notice that, yeah, it's Control Z that gets you out, okay? Oh, and yeah, it's always a good idea to close the door, isn't it? To exit a program properly. That's the other thing they don't tell you. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is use NetSH options. And what we want to do is use it to mess with your wireless, okay? So for the last part of this, what we want to do is have you execute a couple of simple commands. This may look familiar to you. Earlier in the season, we asked you to collect information about your system. And does anybody remember anything about netstat-a or netsh interface, show neighbors, anything like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So what I've done is added another section called netsh WLAN show profile. Now this basic command queues up all of the wireless profiles. WLAN means Wi-Fi network or Wi-Fi LAN. WLAN, Wi-Fi LAN. When you use this command first, it's going to show you all the profiles that are on this local host for my wireless connections. I'm going to issue the CLS just so I get a clear screen here, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and type in netsh WLAN, and then what was it? Show profile. It's a pretty straightforward command. And what this does is it returns all of the wireless connectivity that I've been engaged in since I last cleared my network settings and cleared my cache, right? So you can see here that I've connected to a wireless network called JK, Detmer ERO, VINGN. Oh, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? Bucks Wi-Fi. Yeah, that sounds familiar. I wonder what Jordan and Lutheran and We Are Borg is. In any case, it's queued up that information. And now if I take one more step and follow that with a net SHWLAN export profile, and then use some extra switches to stuff that into a temp folder and use the key equals clear option, it's going to reveal the secret that was used to connect to that Wi-Fi. So it's going to return all of the shared secrets that I used to connect when I was on this system on those other Wi-Fi connections, right? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and copy this command. Any questions so far?
No.
I'm going to paste this, and what it's done is it's created a text file which has that information and stored it in the temp folder for all of those Wi-Fi connections. And in fact, if I go into my Wi-Fi settings and I look at all of those different Wi-Fi connections, right? If I go into my view, let's see, let's go into Wi-Fi, show available networks, manage known networks. Does this look familiar? Yeah, there it is, right? And how many of you go through there and forget those networks, right? Anybody?
Often. Yeah, very
Not
often.
often.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a force of habit. We don't go in there and take out the trash, right? We just leave it in there. We don't think anything of it, but somebody gets on your system, what can they do with two very quick commands? Well, let's pivot and go to the temp folder and have a look. And this is what you're going to put in for the last step. In the temp folder, what you'll see is that this generated a file for the American Airlines Lounge when I was in the Admirals Club in Miami. So now if I want to connect to the Admirals Lounge where all the interesting and wealthy people are, right? I had a day pass, but there are some people that can afford an annual pass. Ooh, do they have extra money, right? They just reek of extra money. You see people walking around there and you're like, oh, I know this person works, they must work for one of those Fortune 500 companies, or maybe for a government agency, right? So I can be in the airport just within range of that lounge. I don't have to be in the lounge, and I know how to connect. Now, what I did was collect this before, and what you're seeing here is what's going to result when you run this on your machine. It'll show you the name of that Wi-Fi connection. But what you're really looking for here is the shared key section. Does everybody see this?
Yeah.
And there it is. That's the secret password that you need to connect to the Admirals Lounge in Miami. And there's just two of those, right? And they're kind of tied together on the network. So point is I can start collecting information about people who are using the Wi-Fi in that neighborhood. It's pretty nasty. Now, what do I want you to do? This is the screen I want you to capture for your final step. But I don't want you to show your own Wi-Fi secret when you submit to your instructor, because everyone knows you can trust your instructor, right? Yes, your instructor is very trustworthy person. He will never take the personal information you submit for your classes and use them against you, right?
I hope so.
Yeah, so what I want you to do is I want you to capture this screen, right? Where you've highlighted the shared key for one of your networks. But use the Alt key when you hit print screen. And when you paste this into a new paint window, I want you to take this pencil and select a really fat line here, and I want you to do this first. And scratch over that so I can't read it, okay? And then I want you to save this as a JPEG, right? So what you're going to do at this point is save it as a JPEG. Oh, now I gotta convert it back, right? Good enough. I'm going to go ahead and save this as with my name and the assignment number. So it'd be 4.1 T Kentop step 3, right? And that way you have obviously discovered how quick and easy and powerful this is and how embarrassing it is to get quick information off of somebody's laptop. You don't have to be an administrator to run this command. You just have to have access to that system, and away you go. So that's what I wanted you to experience for your final step of the final assignment in this course, is just a practical way to get quick information off of a system. Now, this is actually really helpful if you forget what the code was and you're like, yeah, I don't know what the Wi-Fi passcode is at my girlfriend's house, but you're going to help her with her such and such homework. I mean, this is where you look it up, right? Or this is one way to look it up. That's good and that's bad. It all depends on who it is that's looking it up and why they're looking it up. In any case, this is your final step. This is the last thing, and I want you to blur the value, please. I don't want to see your actual Wi-Fi secret, because you shouldn't trust anyone, especially your cybersecurity instructor. Any questions?
No.
Okay. Once again, the study guide and references and the addendum, very straightforward, plain English, short. Very important stuff about network security, right? Network exposure. And what you just learned was how to build a quick app to open a connection to a server, to a host on a network with very little information, right? Run an nmap command, right? Run a quick scan of the network. Now you have all those IP addresses and host names. Same thing works. And you can connect to it. You can get information back out. This is how the whole process of exploitation begins. Too easy. You also saw how common examples that are shared on the internet often exclude best practices. So even if you were doing this legitimately to build a network application, you would soon discover that there's extra stuff. Where are we here? Extra stuff that causes problems, like memory address allocations that are too big for what you really need. And so people run with it and it works, and they're just relieved that it works, and they don't noodle with it to pare that down. Why do I need 4,096 bytes of memory address space when I really only need like 256 or 512 to get the job done? I'm leaving a whole lot of space for somebody to put malicious content in there. Think buffer overflows, SQL injections, all that kind of thing, right? Just wanted to show you that this is a real problem. And we have to take that into account whenever we're coding a network solution. So whether you're talking about software, hardware, operating system, device drivers, networking, it's always situational awareness. It's always the context. You have to look at layers. Every device, every system is only one of a collection of systems, and they're all connected. That's why they call this systems security, right? All it takes is one loose chink in the armor. Right, so yeah, you see these topics and quick details, but most of that's summarized in your study guide and addendum. I will remain available, and what will happen is that I will post the module 4 assessment before the day is out. And if you would, complete that before close of business tomorrow, 11:59 PM tomorrow. Again, it's shorter, fewer assessment items, same credit, right? So you post more credit for less effort, but it's really important effort. This last module is really important. It's the thing you want to remember going out into the world after this course. Does anyone have any comments or concerns or questions about your exam? We'll post the final exam next week according to the official UVI exam schedule, but you don't have to engage the final exam at that time or day. You do have until 11:59 PM, not this Saturday, but the following Saturday. If you haven't completed your retakes of each of the module assessments or reconciled some of those, if you'd like to resubmit assignments or solutions to log more credit, you still have plenty of time to do that. And I'll remain available to assist as needed. Thoughts?
I have a question, but
Yes.
it's not about what we did today.
Okay, hold on.
So I'll just wait until after the class.
Yes.